are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is February 23rd, 2025, and this is episode 309 of Lighthearted. My co-host today is Jen Lewis, fundraising and outreach manager at the Point Cabrillo Lighthouse in Northern California. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Jeremy. How's it going?
It's going well. A little cold, but good. Welcome back, Jen. It's always great to have you on the podcast. So we're doing something a little differently this time with this episode. Usually I kind of do things in separate segments when we record. But in a few minutes, we'll be talking with Desiree Heveroh, who has a long involvement with East Brother Light Station in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she also has a new book out. So today we're recording everything at once. So you'll actually be taking part in the interview. You're going to stay with us right through the interview.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited. I have been friends with Desiree on Facebook for a long time, but we've never actually gotten to meet in person. So this will be a lot of fun.
Right. Well, this is close to meeting in person.
Exactly.
Doing it via Zoom. Yeah, she mentioned that you two are well acquainted, so that's great. Glad to have a chance to have you both on the podcast at the same time. Jen, there's been a lot of crazy weather and floods. I don't need to tell you that in California. The state's in the news all the time, of course. Sadly, for some rough reasons. But I'm wondering how things have been in your neck of the woods around Northern California, around Mendocino recently.
Well, we do kind of live in a bubble here in Mendocino. We have had some beautiful weather over the past couple weeks. Definitely some big ocean, but gorgeous king tides. There's lots of tide pooling going on. I've had a lot of friends who have headed down to the fires down in Southern California to help out down there. So we're definitely supporting them however we can from up here. But we are pretty lucky to be on the Northern California coast for sure.
Yeah. Well, of course, there were fires around there. That's a few years ago now, right? There were some serious fires around there.
We've definitely seen our fair share out here, but since we're backed up so close to the ocean out here and protected by our redwood forest, we've been pretty lucky through the years. But yeah, Northern California inland has definitely been hit hard quite a few times.
Yeah. And I was just looking at the weather forecast. We're recording this in late January, and I saw that there's a current. I didn't look today. I looked yesterday, but it said there was a warning about large unexpected waves. I think it said sneaker waves. On the East Coast, we tend to say rogue waves, but maybe sneaker waves is a West Coast thing.
Yeah.
Have you had any sneaker waves lately?
It has been a really interesting month. You, of course, know all about our drama back in 2023 when the waves crashed through the back doors of Point Cabrillo Lighthouse.
Yeah.
This season, we have seen so many huge waves just breaking over the side of the cliff. Thankfully, nothing that hit the lighthouse again, which I'm going to knock on wood right now to make sure that doesn't happen again anytime soon. But yeah, it's been pretty impressive. Earlier, just a week or two ago, we put the shutters up on the back door because the waves were so big. It was right during the king tide. So we were already so high, and then the really big swell. So we had the shutters on our back windows and back doors just to protect, because our stomachs dropped when we looked at the ocean.
I can imagine after what happened in 2023, like you said. Yeah, as soon as I saw that forecast of sneaker waves, I thought of what happened then. So I'm glad you've been okay lately. So why don't we move on to today's interview? Can you help me introduce Desiree Heveroh, please, Jen?
Sure thing, Jeremy. Desiree Heveroh describes herself as a steward and keeper of the history of the city of Richmond, California, located in the San Francisco Bay Area's East Bay region. She was a longtime board member at the East Brother Light Station, which is situated on an island in the strait that separates San Francisco Bay and San Pablo Bay. East Brother is open to the public as a bed and breakfast inn, and Desiree actually lived on the lighthouse for 14 months during the COVID pandemic. She's also the shipkeeper for the historic SS Red Oak Victory ship in Richmond.
Yeah, definitely want to ask her about that. Desiree has a new book out. I have it right next to me here. She was nice enough to send me a copy. Co-written with Victoria Stuhr. The book is simply titled Richmond. It's one of Arcadia Publishing's Past and Present series, which offers a special view of American life by placing historical images side by side with contemporary photographs. So let's welcome today's guest. Hi, Desiree. How you doing?
Hey, Jeremy. Great. How about you?
Very, very good. It's freezing cold here in New Hampshire, but otherwise everything is great. So I hope things are fairly normal where you are, as opposed to some parts of California recently.
Yeah, sunny California. That's the Bay Area. I mean, you can't, well, you do pay for the weather, but but it's worth it.
Yeah. So anyway, Desiree, you and of course Jen Lewis is helping is a part of this interview as well and co-hosting this episode, and you guys know each other, right?
Virtually.
We
I
sure do.
can't
Virtually.
wait until we meet in person.
One of these days we'll actually meet in person.
Yeah. Well, meeting via Zoom like this is, I guess, the next best thing to actually meeting in person. But you should maybe meet halfway between the two places there.
Oh, I
For
want to come.
real.
I want
Yeah.
to
Visit. Yeah, you should visit. Yeah, you should visit Point Cabrillo, Desiree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want you to take me around Richmond at some point as well. So
Yeah.
we'll make some plans here pretty soon.
Deal.
Sounds good. So, Desiree, I was just in preparation. I was looking at your LinkedIn page. You have some really interesting work experience. It's a really entertaining LinkedIn page. You've been involved with the Richmond Museum of History and, a number of things, as you know, that relate to history of Richmond in that area and various businesses and organizations around there. Is that where you're from originally?
Yeah,
Richmond?
I am a homegrown Richmond Rosie.
Richmond
Wow.
Rosie, is that an actual thing there, a term?
Well, so wherever there were shipyards, there were Rosies.
Oh,
Rosie
Rosie the
Riveter,
Riveters, yeah.
that iconic image.
Yep.
But Richmond had just a number of influences during World War II and the shipyard experience. So we have the only national Rosie the Riveter Museum in Richmond that is free. So Rosie is a big deal out here. So I call myself a homegrown Rosie.
Yeah. Have you ever posed for a picture, like flexing your muscle with a kerchief on your head and all that? You have done that?
Many times before the pandemic, the before times, we would have an annual Rosie gathering. One time we broke the Guinness Book of World Records for the most Rosies in one place. And then Michigan promptly then beat it the next year. And so we kind of do a little back and forth. And then it stopped for the pandemic, but it sure was cute seeing babies dressed up like Rosie, dogs dressed up like Rosies. Even our men were coming dressed like Rosie. It was wonderful.
It's funny, my neighbor's dog is named Rosie. I don't think it's for that reason. Just that when you said dogs dressed up as Rosie, I have a Rosie dog next door here. Here on the East Coast, we had a lot of shipyards, of course, including one in South Portland, Maine, where they built a lot of Liberty ships during World War II, and they had a lot of women. A lot of the workforce was women, and I believe they called him Wendy the welder at the shipyard.
Right. The welders were Wendy's and the riveters were Rosie's.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Well, let me ask you, you kind of said it to some degree already, but let me ask you, what's so special about Richmond to you? Hard to know where to start, right?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, I think about a lot. I lament the fact that growing up, we aren't really taught about our city's history. And I learned it on my own through volunteering with organizations, like you mentioned, with the Richmond Museum Association, which has two prongs to it, the museum and the Red Oak. And, of course, at the light station. And so through that volunteering and being board member, I learned so much about my incredible city. And I can't get enough history and facts. And I'm always telling people, I run a historic inn here in Point Richmond, and I'm always telling people about Richmond. It's got something for everyone. It's got 32 miles of shoreline, which is 6 more miles than Malibu. And the history definitely predates World War II, but man, did World War II make a massive impact on Richmond. Henry J. Kaiser was advertising in newspapers all over the nation, come to Richmond for a job. You know, the average salary was pittance. It maybe was like 23 cents an hour at the time. He was, said, come make $1.26 an hour. But he was
Wow.
very smartly getting a lot of that back. They were paying the cafeteria for their lunches. They were paying into the Kaiser Permanente health plan for their medical, and to the Maritime Children's Center to take care of their children. So he was getting it back, but he was also taking care of his employees. And we were one of the original melting pots with all of those different people and nationalities and cultures and food and religion just kind of coming in earlier at a time than the rest of the nation was. And so that makes for effects that we can still see today.
I love the enthusiasm you have for Richmond. And, Richmond has almost twice as much shoreline as we have here in the state of New Hampshire. We have an 18-mile seacoast in New Hampshire. But it's choice.
We're a little bit smaller, but, we're a little bit bigger. And we're centrally located to everything. If traffic's good, you can get to San Francisco in 20 minutes, Oakland in 20 minutes, Berkeley, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So you mentioned the inn where you work, which is the Hotel Mac in Richmond, right?
Correct.
It sounds like a really interesting place. Can you say a bit about that?
Sure. So it was built in 1911. Now, this is at a time where you don't have to file for permits and get all of the inspectors and all of that jazz. So ground broke in May of 1911, and they opened in September of 1911 because you can get a lot done when you don't have all of those hangups.
That's true.
It was it was opened by a single Irish immigrant named Kate Reardon. She was 21 years old. She'd come to work in Point Richmond at a hotel and had such a good reputation as a hostess. And the businessmen would say, Katie, when are you going to get your own place? And she's 21. She's an immigrant. She doesn't have the money for that. They lent her the money so that she could.
Story.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. I don't know if I've ever heard about anything like that, similar anywhere else in that era. That really is very impressive. And you also mentioned the Red Oak a few minutes ago. I'm interested in the work you do for the SS Red Oak Victory ship. Can you tell us what's significant about the ship, and what do you do as the shipkeeper? That's your title, right?
That's right. So the SS Red Oak Victory was a 558th ship out of 747 ships that were produced here in the Kaiser shipyards. And then we produced all kinds. You mentioned the Liberty ships. In your shipyards, we did Liberties, we did Victories, we did all kinds of different ships. So the Red Oak was built in 81 or 87. I have to look back on my records. Days. If you can imagine, they were just turning ships out left and right. She actually served more in the Pacific, launching from this area. Your guys' shipyards launched the ships that would really go over, to Europe predominantly. But she did serve some time in Vietnam and Korea. She was an ammunitions carrier, so she was a floating target for the enemy. And she would bring cargo over at different ventures. And then she was in the mothball fleet. And to our knowledge, before we discovered her, there were no surviving ships from the Kaiser shipyards. And the mothball contacted the Richmond Museum Association and said, we think we've got one of your ships. And sure enough, it was. And, all kinds of strings were pulled and, favors were asked. And we got her back here in Richmond, where she was born, where she belongs. On the weekend, she's a floating museum ship open to the public. There are events that are done, pancake breakfasts, 4th of July barbecues, old movie nights in the theater. And so I get to be shipkeeper on the Red Oak. I have a co-shipkeeper, so we trade off depending on the schedule. So I have my own cabin there, and it's really kind of amazing. And there was a YouTube video about it that went viral. Within 2 months, it had 2 million views.
Wow.
It's a good time.
I wish the U.S. Lighthouse Society get 2 million views of of something. That's amazing. As we were talking about that, of all those Liberty ships that were built in this country, and I think it was at least several hundred, it might have been over 1,000. I'm not sure the number, but only 2 of them survive, as you might know. One of them is the Jeremiah O'Brien in San Francisco, which was built in South Portland, Maine, an hour north of me here. So.
Fun fact about the Jeremiah O'Brien.
I'll bet I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and say it.
In the movie Titanic.
Yep.
The engine room scenes are filmed there.
Yeah,
Wow.
I knew that because I used to give tours, from Portsmouth, all-day lighthouse tours. I did that for a number of years, and I would take people there, and that's one of the things I would always tell them. So I had a hunch but it's a great little
That is a
tie-in.
very fun fact. I didn't know that, so thank you.
Absolutely. I've been on the O'Brien. It's so cool.
I've seen it, but I didn't have a chance to get on.
One of the things you list in your resume is sedulous factotum. What the heck does that mean?
Did you look it up?
I haven't. I wanted you to tell me.
So basically, I'm saying with very fancy words that I can do a lot of things really well. And I like to come off right off the bat with that because that makes a person have to look it up. If you're going to be working with me, we're going to be setting a high bar right off the bat.
Love it.
That's how I do.
Yeah, I have to admit, I did look it up, and it kind of amounts to something like reliable employee. Maybe that's not quite right, but it's along those lines, like very knowledgeable and reliable.
Dependable.
Dependable, yeah.
Can wear many hats.
But did you make up that phrase, sedulous factotum? I love it.
Well, both words exist.
But not together necessarily.
I put them together, right.
I love it. You should write a book with that title. And speaking of books, your new book, the title is Richmond. And I have my copy that you so nicely mailed to me right here next to me. It's a beautiful book. And I have to tell you, we're supposed to be trading books. And I promise I'll get the book I'm sending to you, my book on West Coast Lighthouses, I'll get in the mail this week, I promise. Sorry, I'm a little slow on that. But thank you so much. It's really a beautiful book. And it's one of the Arcadia Publishing series, past and present, right? Where you have both historic photos and present day photos of the same areas, showing how things have developed, how they've evolved or devolved, maybe in some cases. But it's a nice book. Congratulations on it. Can you say a little bit more about what is the scope of the book? Like what period does it cover?
Sure. So as you mentioned, it's from the famed Arcadia series. And when I say that, people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I'll say, the sepia tone colored ones.
But yours isn't one of the sepia toned ones.
Not, but that's where I can get them to say, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So they had these ones that you're familiar with are Images of America series. They had a Then and Now, which they changed to Past and Present series that can kind of show the evolution of a place over time, right? So they approached me to write this, and I was thrilled. But when you have a publishing company that is in charge of all of it, they're paying for everything, they basically make the rules. So there were a lot of limitations. I mean, incredible limitations. It was killing my creativity because I need to spread these wings, man.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I've written 2 Images of America books, and I know exactly what you're saying. They're a great company, and they have a formula that's extremely successful for them. But with the Images of America books, I had to basically shoehorn everything into a template and I can't vary, and captions have to be a certain number of words and so forth. So I'm sure you had a lot of that to deal with.
All of that to deal with. Anything that I wanted, it was just like, no. And then when it came down to choosing which building would go on the cover, they said no for the light station. And I said, I will not finish this book.
Good for you.
Nice.
Pick the building that goes on the cover at least.
Yeah.
So they said, well, they'll send us 10 images and we'll choose which one. So fine, that's fine. As long as it's the light station, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it works very well as the cover, the old and new pictures of East Brother Light Station.
I was obsessed for the ones that I took because I did have a partner, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria
Stuhr,
Stuhr,
is that how do you pronounce her last name? Stuhr?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She took some pictures. I took some pictures. She carried a lot of the weight of the research, but I was obsessed with getting the pictures almost exact to the old one. So you can see that a lot in the detail if you pay attention. But so obviously it starts here in 1873 with the light station.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes up to, current times. But while we were doing this, there were so many of our abandoned and dilapidated buildings that were so important in making Richmond what it is today. And we didn't want to forget them. So we added a chapter called Forget-Me-Nots.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
because we didn't want these buildings to lose their story.
I love that.
Well, you've done definitely a service to the area with this book. I was just thinking, as you were speaking, you say it starts with 1873 with the lighthouse. Of course, Richmond, I think, was incorporated something like 1905. Is that right?
1905.
Yeah.
So light station predates the incorporation of the city by 32 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Making it the oldest building in Richmond.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. I was just thinking how it's different on the East and West Coast, obviously. 1905 is like very recent history in New England.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just babes over here in California.
Yeah.
For real.
But then you go to someplace like England or a lot of other places in the world, and there's buildings from 1100 and castles and all kinds of stuff. So it's all relative. So it must have taken a while to put the book together. Did you say you had Victoria did a lot of the research too? But I imagine did you get most of the historical photos from Historical Society, the Historical Museum, or how did that work?
Right. So at the time that I started this book, I was the executive director of the Richmond Museum of History.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead and helped myself to the collection photos. Additionally, the Point Richmond History Association, the Richmond Public Library, some individual resources like Christian Wimmer. He actually took the current because we couldn't use a Zoom feature. The rules, man, they were intense. If there weren't this level of rules, I could have finished this book in 6 months. But there were so many rules. So we had a lot of help. It was a little labor of love, and lots of people came together for it. Because, as you mentioned, the character count, we couldn't have more than 80 characters, and that included photo courtesy of. So I couldn't include so many interesting things. But of course, the lighthouse has a second page because I love her the most. But fun fact for the viewers, there's a little smudge right here.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fingerprint smudge from Mrs. Stenmark, who had her own dark room at the light station and developed her own photos.
Oh,
By the
my
way,
gosh.
this will just be an audio episode of the podcast, so people listening won't have seen what you were just pointing out, but they should buy the book, of course. And what page was that on? Let's see. I'm looking in my.
It's the first. It's the
right
first
at the beginning.
building in the Point Richmond Historic District, page 12.
Oh yeah. Well, that makes sense. It'd be at the beginning. Yeah. I see exactly what you're talking about. The finger smudge. That's funny.
That is so cool. What a fun little piece hidden in the book.
Yeah. But
There was
aside
a
from
lot.
this,
I did a lot of little Easter eggs in this book. I included my grandmother's church. She had passed away, so in honor of her, I included her church. You can see me if you know where to look because in drone shots.
oh, okay.
Amazing.
Cool. So moving on to talk about the lighthouse, you've been involved with East Brother Lighthouse going back, I think, to around 2010. Is that about right?
2010.
Yeah. And I know you were on the board of directors for a long time, but how did you first get involved with the lighthouse?
Well, I first fell in love with the lighthouse years before that, driving across this Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, noticed it. My daughter said, "Hey, there's a house out there on an island." And I just felt a pull. And so over the years, I was trying to learn more about it, what it was. And then I learned you could go on as a wiki, a volunteer. We call our volunteers wikis in honor of the old time of keeping the wick.
Yep.
And so I started going as a volunteer and coming to some board meetings to give some updates on marketing, because they were looking for a marketing person, and I took that on. And then they said, we need new board members. We need to recruit some young blood, and I jumped right on that. So by the time that I was going to be moving to the light station, I was doing marketing, I was doing the volunteer coordinating, I was doing the gift shop, I was doing the newsletters, just everything that I could to be more involved, to give more back, and to learn just every facet of what it would take to be involved, because I secretly had wanted so badly to become, and not so secretly, an innkeeper. I knew that I was supposed to live there, and that's the only way you could live there as innkeeper. So I thought, well, that's how to reach that goal, right? Not goal. I knew I was going to live there.
And of course you did. We'll get to that in a moment. But let me ask you about something that we've discussed. We talked about it when you were last on the podcast, which was 2021. I think it was hard to believe it was that long ago. But at that time, the underwater cable had failed that provided power to the light station. What's happening with that now?
So it was spliced at the end of May, like really at the end of May. It was spliced, professionally spliced. So it'll hold for, several years, but it's not going to hold for another 30 years, like the last time it was replaced. So the last time it had to be replaced was because of a lightning strike. And then before that, was because like a ship or something with their anchor, snapping it. So the splice is not going to hold for 30 years. It'll hold for many years. So of course the fundraising continues, and everyone thinks that they have come up with the solution that no one thought of. Solar. Just put solar out there. Problem solved.
Is there some solar already there, or there is, isn't there?
It's one panel, and it's for one of the hot water heaters.
Oh, okay. And there's no wind power or anything like that?
There's not. And believe me, every single possible power option was explored, was priced out. Experts were out there. Because it holds a National Register of Historic Places title, there are limitations to what is allowed. And the word is very specific. It's no changes to the structure or the grounds. Yeah,
but isn't it okay if the state historic authorities okay it, if you make a good case for why we need to do this?
Our president, Tom Butt, did apply for like an emergency amendment when the power had gone out. So it was obviously not approved.
Okay.
But a new submarine cable is needed.
Yeah.
It does have a very hefty price tag on it. Although the Coast Guard technically owns the island, they don't have to spend the $1 million, because with technology being what it is, they can stick a small solar panel at the light and power the light, which is their only real obligation, right? Yep. So it's up to the B&B to raise the funds, and that fundraising continues.
Yeah. Well, to be continued, but at least the place is up and running right now.
Yeah. How long does that usually, do people usually project that something like that will last? Like, how long do you think the island has right now?
With a splice, there's no guarantee. Because the technical breach in the cable happened in an area that it rubs up against the rocks. It beats up against the rocks.
Yeah.
So
East Brother Light Station has overnight accommodations out there as well that are open to the public, right? Can you describe a little bit more about that?
Sure. In the actual Victorian itself, there are 4 rooms, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. And in the fog signal building, there's 1 room, and it tends to be my favorite. It's in honor of Walter Fanning. His grandparents ran the light station in the early 1900s. And actually, during this Spanish influenza,
Oh.
they had little Walter and his sister Emma and their mother come move to the light station to stay safe, thus escaping the flu, much as I was doing. And then when it came time to save the light station, Walter was front and center as a part of that group. And he was there every day during the renovation. He built himself a little room because he was there every day. And he called it Walter's Quarters. And that's now a room that guests can stay in. While I was living there, I gathered up, everything was just kind of scattered about, anything related to Walter's lineage. And I moved it into that area so that you were getting the full Walter Fanning experience when you lived there. So that's my favorite. It's also, you can smell the old oil from the machines, which I tend to really enjoy. So, and it's kind of a little private. It's away from the house, away from everyone else. I really recommend that one. The upstairs units, you have the Marin room and the San Francisco room. And then the downstairs units, the Two Sisters and the West Brother room, and they share a restroom that's right off the dining room. But that's not really terrible because nobody's taking a shower anyway. It is a limited water supply. There is no plumbing from the mainland. So all the water supply is caught from rainwater in the cistern. California doesn't get that much rain. So as a measure of conserving water, if you're just an overnight guest for one night, you can't take a shower.
Okay.
That sounds like such a cool place to spend the night, even without the shower.
100%. People think, oh gosh, for that price tag. But once they get out there, they're just like, wow, I can't even believe I was allowed to do something like this. It's an incredible experience. You get the boat ride to the light station. You're greeted with champagne and appetizers. You get your stuff set, a little tour of the house, a little history. 4-course gourmet dinner with all the wines and beers, and in the morning your full breakfast, a demonstration of the historic diaphone, and then the ride back. It is an action-packed stay, and I like to tell guests, plan it most ideal if you could book all of the rooms and then just have it be your group of people, and book the whole house. And that's an incredible experience. But even if you can't do that, something like during a lunar eclipse, during a meteor shower, what a wonderful place to get to see these things.
Absolutely. What a dream. And you got to see a lot out there, right? I mean, you lived out there at the lighthouse for 14 months. How did that come about?
Well, COVID, which, everyone just has really negative connotation about, except for me. COVID hit, and, we, like everyone else, was saying, this will be figured out in a month. It's fine. Everything's going to go back to normal in a month. So we were just canceling reservations by the month, waiting for what was happening. But in about June, the writing was on the wall, and the keepers weren't making money, and they wanted to move on. So we didn't have a backup plan. No one was ready for COVID, and we couldn't leave it alone, unattended. You can get squatters and looters in the water world just like you can on the mainland.
Absolutely.
And tried as I might over a decade that I wanted to be keeper, it wasn't working out. And I kept thinking, how could I be so wrong? I'm so sure that I'm supposed to live at this light station. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, that's how universe.
So that's why COVID happened.
Oh, no, that's why I had to wait so long.
Yeah.
So I gave up where I was living. I put all my stuff in storage, and I moved out to the light station. Wow. And then, and nobody knew. Hey, it could just be another month. It could just be another 2 months. that's fine. I only brought my summer clothes because I thought, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months. It was every season that was passing, every holiday, every milestone. I just was so grateful that I got to be there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So what was the best thing or the best things about living there?
People know things on paper. You know things intellectually, but there is a difference in really knowing something through your very soul. And gratitude is an incredible healer. I looked at weather differently out there. Out here, windy, rainy, suck, ew. But out there, rainy meant rainbows. Rainy meant, color. All my flowers would bloom. Rainy meant such good things.
Mm-hmm.
It just changes. Time works very different because you have to exist by the tides. You have to exist by the wind and what direction. And it was a brand new world, and it was incredible.
You make me think. Years ago, I was involved with Friends of the Boston Harbor Islands, and they used to talk about island time. Time is a very different thing on an island than it is on the mainland. But also, what you're saying, when you're on an island like that, there's no other buildings near you and everything. You're getting that expanse all around you that's missing when we're in the city. And I think, people tend to go through their lives with hardly noticing the sky or what's happening, around them in the natural environment. So it had to be amazing. I would imagine amazing at night with the night skies being out there too.
I got to see the Neowise comet with my bare eye. Any kind of if there was going to be a meteor shower, like all of that stuff that I was talking about, I made sure to catch it. And this is kind of a sad but funny story. So there was going to be a lunar eclipse, and it was going to be something like at 2 or 3 in the morning, right? I never had to look at clocks or deal with alarms or anything like that. And I'd gotten a new phone. So it was the first time I was setting an alarm on my phone. And I woke up in the morning, and I was like, no, how did I miss this? I'm looking at my alarm. It says it went off. I listened to the audio of the alarm. Birds and waves.
Blended right in.
Oh, gosh.
That's how I missed it.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds so amazing. But it couldn't have all been rainbows and gorgeous night skies, right? What were the worst things about living out there?
Okay. Well, we had a roofer that was coming to fix the copper roof around the Widow's Walk. And it had to be a specific, certified in historic buildings and all that, because you have to meet the National Register, regulations. And this man, it took him 7 months to finish 75 square feet.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was a really long time. He would come a week at a time every month, and just our energy just didn't sync in any way, shape, or form at all. And I would dread those weeks. But I sat with it, as I got to do for so many things at the light station. And I understood that there had to be a balance. I was getting so much good that there had to be something that wasn't good. It had to be balanced. And once I accepted that, I was happy to have to deal with it. If it just, if it meant the light station,
Yeah.
Totally.
I guess that's not so bad if that was the worst thing.
Well, this book of yours just came out, and you probably don't have writing another book on your mind right now, but have you thought about writing a book about your experience living at the light station?
Of course. I thought I was going to write that right away. But then I got the ship, and then I thought, well, now there's another part, right? And then I got the hotel, and I got the museum. And so the book is still writing itself, but I'm actually really grateful for the amount of time that's passing, because the further away I get, the more perspective, Things look a little different the further away you get. And so you can write it not with detached emotion, because I'm completely just saturated in emotion for the light station, but detached from little random things. It will be just a more organic book. It's going to be a series.
Ooh.
And the title
on
for
Netflix, a series on Netflix, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Or HBO maybe?
Tell them, pitch to them.
Absolutely, I'd watch it.
It'll be a book series, but the light station part of it is going to be called I'll Be Our Brother's Keeper, and ISLE.
Oh,
so that one's
love
done.
it. Love it. That is perfect.
Very cute. Now, when I was there in 2015, I think things have changed since then in a number of ways. But I remember to get there, I remember driving down an endless road, like a not very good road. And I kept thinking, this can't be right. This can't be right. And driving and getting to it's like a marina. And there was like a kind of a ramshackle bar kind of place where I had to sit and wait for the boat ride. I think all that has kind of changed since I was there. Is that right?
Massively changed. It changed ownership, and they paved that road. So that's great. And they brought an incredible collection of art and sculptures, so the kind of sculptures that you'd see at Burning Man, right? So once you get, and then it's more of a community. They have a little farm there, so they grow organic food. They have goats and all of that kind of stuff. And then there was the Black Star Pirate Barbecue place that was there that made it just explode. Everybody then knew about the Point San Pablo Harbor. They since moved out, and so now the restaurant is Sailing Goat. But it's still like, I was always kind of describing it as a phantasmagorical wonderland. And recommending to the guests that when they get dropped off by the keepers at around 10 or 11, that they allot time to explore the harbor. It's really a gem.
And when I was there, there were a number of people living in the harbor on like houseboats and things. And is that still the case?
True. Yeah, it's still true. All the wonderful, quirky characters that are there, living a different kind of life. And I thought, when I was leaving the light station, I thought, maybe I'll see if I can rent a boat there so I can still be close to the light station. Not really like you change as a person living in solitude for that long, living on the water for that long. I didn't want to immediately reinstate myself into the mainland. So I thought, I'll still hear the waves. I'll still hear the seagulls. I'll be close by. I'll live on a boat. Yeah. Well, and then the universe said, yeah, you will be living on a boat. An old World War II boat. So I do still hear
or at least spending a lot of your time there. You don't actually live on the boat, or you haven't. Is that possible? Can you stay overnight on the boat?
I did live there full time until I got the hotel job.
You did? Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I still can.
Wow.
It's so cool.
I picture little crew quarters with like hammocks or something, or it's probably maybe a little better than that.
My cabin is the chief steward cabin, so it's very nice.
La-di-da.
So cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware of that. So just one other thing about the visiting the lighthouse. Obviously, people can stay there overnight, but can they also go out and tour it during the day if they're not staying overnight?
It depends on the keepers. So it always depends on the keepers how much of an extra load they want to take on. I cannot emphasize enough. It is hard just living there, but add the component of the B&B, and it's a lot of work. People. So day trips are the option of the keeper. If they say yes, day trips can happen on Saturdays. For that in-between time of dropping the morning guests off and picking the evening guests up. And I think it's about $50 a person. You can bring your own little, lunch, whatever, and just kind of get a little taste of it out there. I assure every single person who goes on a day trip is wishing they had booked an overnight when it's time to leave. again, weddings are also at the discretion of the keepers. The logistics of a wedding are incredibly difficult out there, and many a rental chair has been lost over the boat on the wedding.
Hmm.
So it's really up to them how much extra they want to take on.
Yeah. Reminds me of the days of lighthouse keepers, like the old lighthouse service, the civilian keepers. Part of their job was to show people around if they wanted to see the place. But their job came first always. So, if they had something important going on, then they couldn't take the time to show people around. But being a tour guide was kind of part of the job. Maybe not as much on islands as on the mainland. But
much easier.
yeah. So speaking of keepers, and you've been talking about you refer to them as keepers. Some people might quibble with the semantics. To some of us lighthouse historians, a keeper was an actual employee of the federal government who lived at and maintained the light, full time. Today, it's often used a little more loosely, but the people who live there and watch over the place and handle the overnight stays and everything, they are modern day keepers in many ways. But I usually paraphrase or put prefix before it, modern day keepers. It's a little different from the old fashioned keepers.
Well, actually,
yeah.
For this case, they are technically innkeepers.
Right. Well, there you go. Yeah. So they are keepers.
They are keepers. I was a light station keeper.
Yeah. And you're also a ship keeper. So
I'm a ship keeper and I'm an innkeeper.
Wow.
You do it all.
You do. You do.
Keeper.
So there is currently a search for new keepers at East Brother Light Station. So what are they looking for? What kind of person or people are they looking for?
So this search is right on time. Historically, keepers last about 2 years. Mm-hmm. It is all day, every day, work, and miss out on family milestones, etc. So it's hard. It wears through people pretty fast. About every 2 years, we've had some people last a little longer, some people last a little less, but that's the typical time. Now, people only became aware of this job when the search that went viral happened a couple of years ago, and oh, that's a job. Yeah, every 2 years. This is par for the course. So what happens is that the current keepers will give many months notice to allow for being able to receive applications, sift through the candidates, see who's qualified, and then there are multiple interviews that happen, whether it is via Zoom or in person. And we don't sugarcoat the situation. People come in with, oh, I'm going to catch all the sunsets and I'm going to, paint and do my artistic stuff and enjoy it. No, that's not what's happening. You're washing dishes. You're turning beds over.
And then you're exhausted after all that's done. Yeah.
And you're exhausted, and your days off aren't really your days off. You're hauling the propane tanks off that need to get refilled, or taking the boat to get its engine serviced, or the laundry, because everything has to be hauled off the mm-hmm. island, trash, recycling, everything. So it's a really hard job, and we're really honest with people because we want people to know what they're going into. We don't want them to back out early and have to start the whole search over again any sooner than is necessary. Usually before the job went viral that time, usually we would have about maybe 6 to 8 candidates that we were interviewing. The year that it went viral, we had tens of thousands of applicants, and we had to look. Yeah, I know. It was crazy. That's when viral ain't great, right? Not for us anyway. And we had to look at all of them to find the qualified ones. And at the end of it, we had about 65 applicants that we had. It was interviews every day after work, every day for weeks and weeks. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and we say, like, are you ready to take this on? If we choose you, like, And everybody, yes, yes, I'm so ready. And then, sometimes you'll say, okay, we've chosen you guys. Oh, well, actually, we don't think that we can take this kind of thing on. So then we have
Oh,
second pick, third pick, that's happened.
Yeah.
yes.
People love I don't need to tell you, a lot of people really love the idea of being a lighthouse keeper. I just got an email a few days ago from a young person, I'm not sure if it was male or female, 20 years old, saying it's something like, I've been dreaming all my life of being a lighthouse keeper, and they're hoping for a job in Washington or Oregon as a lighthouse keeper, and was asking me advice on how to apply and become a keeper. And I had to break the news to them, well, there ain't no such thing in the traditional sense anymore. The
Yeah.
lights are automated. So I had to kind of break this young person's heart. But
Oh.
I encourage them to look for, that there are jobs at some lighthouses, certainly, and also caretaking positions and things like that. So there might still be hope. But people, it's that romanticism of it all. And I noticed that the pay for the keepers at East Brother is good, but I think it would have to be to keep them there, as you say, for even a couple of years. But also the cost of living around there, I know, is pretty high, so they have to be paid pretty well.
And it's free rent. So
Right, there's that too. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
pretty
if you
good deal, but as you said, it is wearing on people. Yeah,
it's nonstop work. And the poor little 20-year-old, and again, this is not the common case. I don't want people to get the idea that this happens all the time. But I technically did have to keep the light, like in the olden days when the power was out. The Coast Guard was in regular communication with me, because there was a set of batteries that would, if it could charge, it would hold 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes our generator from the 1930s wouldn't work. It would break down. And so I literally had to keep watch on the light. If it went out, if it depleted that 72-hour charge, I had to contact them and they would declare a state of emergency. So I got to experience a little bit of that. There was not a lot of sleep during that time because I took that very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, it never happened. But
yeah. In many ways, you really were kind of in the tradition of the keepers of old. You were a lighthouse keeper for all intents and purposes.
So if people do want to take on this job out at the East Brother Light Station, how do they apply?
okay, so my first piece of advice is read the entire, whatever they're saying, the article, the application, read it. Don't just go in there thinking, oh, that sounds fun. Oh, I don't have my Coast Guard license. I can probably get that. No, you can't. And because of when it went viral, not wanting to be inundated with tens of thousands of applicants, we have kind of almost a gatekeeping system now. You have to load your current U.S. Coast Guard issued license before you can even apply. So
Nice.
that's got to be there. They one or both have to have gourmet meal preparation experience, because that is a part of the experience that we guarantee to the guests. So you're not making open-faced tuna sandwiches and passing that off as gourmet. You've got to have hands in the kitchen. And if you go to, obviously, the links would be in any article that you would see about it. But if you go directly to www.ebls.org, the application link would be on the website directly as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you explained it like that, because I can just imagine people getting on there and think, ooh, I could be a lighthouse keeper. That'd be fun. Just plowing right through thinking they can plow right through the application. But
that's what they do.
Ain't that simple. Yeah.
And then I can say there's little things that we kind of really looked for. I didn't understand the importance of this until I was actually there, but the dynamic between the applicants is important. I was kind of baptism by fire, thrown out there with Captain Jared Ward, who I'd never known before. And he taught me how to drive the boat, how to work on the equipment and all of that. But I don't recommend trying to run a business with someone that you're just getting to know.
Right.
And there's not room for that. So we have looked at the dynamic of the couples applying, especially if they are applying in person.
Yeah.
To see, are they playful? Are they friendly? Are they really familiar? That they can do this and be around each other 24/7.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it reminds me of a couple I used to know who were caretakers or modern keepers at Thatcher Island off Rockport, Massachusetts. It's twin lighthouses. It's two like 124-foot granite towers and a couple of houses too. But they spent quite a few summers out there, and I remember them telling me that there were two lighthouses there, and sometimes one of them would the wife would go to her lighthouse, and the guy would go to his lighthouse. So if they needed to be apart, they each had their lighthouse they could go to. So it'd be handy to have two.
Love that.
All right, Desiree, one final question. This is the bonus points question. Why is it important to preserve the history of a city like Richmond, California?
It's important to preserve the history of any city, I think. But if we're talking about my city in particular, we were just such a great contributor. You can see the effects of Richmond and not even really know that you're looking at something that happened or started in Richmond. The Kaiser Permanente healthcare plan. Who hasn't heard of that? That started here, and a little first aid station at the shipyards. Childcare. Women didn't have to have daycares. They stayed at home until they went to work in the shipyards. The fact that women know that they can do more than being a housewife, kind of happened here also. It's so incredible to teach that and to have pride in where you're from and what impact your tiny little town had. To this day, with all the modern technology that we have, Richmond still holds the record for fastest ship built in the US.
Wow.
In the 40s. So I just for me, I don't want these stories forgotten. It's so easy to forget how easily we forgot. We weren't ready for COVID, but we've been through a pandemic before. The Spanish influenza happened.
Mm-hmm.
If we were learning from history or remembering history, we might have been better prepared.
Very nicely said. And Desiree, it's so nice talking with you again. We'll have to do it sooner than I think it was 3 or 4 years since the last time. We'll have to do it again sooner. Always a pleasure, and congratulations on the new book. And I'm glad you and Jen had a chance to get a little better acquainted today.
Oh, my Jen.
I hope I get to come visit you sometime soon. We'll make it happen.
Let's do it.
So again, Desiree Heveroh, author and keeper of Richmond history, and keeper in multiple ways. Just thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys. And you for your continued support of not just my lighthouse, but all of the lighthouses.
A reminder that you can get the book Richmond from Amazon and other online booksellers. And you can learn more about East Brother Light Station at ebls.org.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you were maybe thinking of applying for the keeper position at East Brother.
Every time that position comes up, Jeremy, I have about 10 or 20 friends who send me the link for the application. But as magical as it sounds, I am a terrible cook, so I don't think they want me out there.
Yeah, and they want a couple. I think there's plenty for 2 people to do there. So
it sounds like a busy job for sure.
Yeah, but pretty cool. I'm anxious to see how they make out with the search for the right people there. So what's on your agenda? What's happening this winter for you? Any special projects at the lighthouse or otherwise?
Yeah, there's always some projects happening at Point Cabrillo. During the winter season, when it's a little quieter out here, we're looking at building a new website. So we're really excited to kind of refresh our online presence there. And I'm hoping to take some time off to explore some more lighthouses. I haven't spent much time in the Big Sur region, and I'm hoping to head down that way this winter.
Yeah. Oh, Point Sur is a great one. I got to visit there in 2015 when I drove up the whole coast. This is a fantastic trip. And you've been on the podcast, of course, a few times before, both as co-host and as a guest. We've talked about it before, but can you remind people about what they can see and do at Point Cabrillo Lighthouse? You mentioned earlier, I think you just had one of your lens tour weekends.
We sure did. We added an extra lens tour to the calendar for the long weekend, and the weather turned out to be absolutely glorious. It's 60 degrees, its sun is shining, and as we were upstairs leading tours and talking about our third order Fresnel lens, we saw about 100 gray whales passing by, and it was just an absolutely perfect day. So we've got lots more lens tours planned for the rest of 2025. You can see those on our website, and right now we're right in the peak of the gray whale migration. The wildflowers are about to go off, and as always, our museums and gift shop are open 365 days a year.
Wow. Sounds like paradise to me. Lighthouse and wildflowers and whales. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Not bad at all.
Not at all. And of course, people can stay overnight at the light station as well, right?
That's right. The Lightkeepers buildings at Point Cabrillo are vacation rentals, and they've been really popular this past year. You can see photos and videos of those on our website or on our social media channels.
Mm-hmm. I need to come out there. I almost made it last year. It didn't quite happen, but I hope it might happen later this year, maybe towards Labor Day weekend around there, which is what I was hoping to do last year. And you need to come out to New England sometime.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. So maybe we can just switch houses for a week.
Well, my wife might have something to say about that, but anyway, I'd love to help you see the sights here in New England. It's
hopefully someday soon. I need to get out there for sure.
Yeah, just don't come in the next few days because right now it's like the wind chill's below zero, so you don't want to come here now.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
So, Jen, thank you again for co-hosting and for being part of our interview today. I think it was fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Anytime, Jeremy. It's always a pleasure.
I'm going to throw one more question at you for bonus points, okay, before we close up for today. So here's the question. What is special, and this is a pretty big, broad question for you, what is special about the state of California?
Okay. It's a broad question, but that's because it's a broad state. This place is so big. We have the mountains and the valleys and the deserts. Here on the coast, we have the rocky outcroppings in Northern California and the sandy beaches down in Southern California, the really big cities, and then rural communities like mine. This state is so big and diverse, and I think that's what's really special about it.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think a lot of people might not think about that so much. I think people, like in this part of the country that think of California, they probably think of Southern California first and foremost.
So true, true.
Yeah, but it is such a varied state, and your part of the state is absolutely gorgeous. As you said, the redwood forest and the beautiful seacoast and everything. So
we're pretty lucky over here.
Yeah. So with that, thank you again for co-hosting. I really appreciate it, and we'll do it again. And to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thanks so much for listening, and
keep a good light.